battling the relentlessly negative doom and gloom news media. It's the Nick Stenger Show, coming to you live from the Stenger Family Office headquarters. It's your host, Nick Stenger.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Nick Stenger Show. My name is Nick Stenger. We are Stenger Family Office. For the past 43 long years, the Stenger family has been delivering you clarity and confidence to help secure your financial future. Thank you for coming back. I realized last episode I accidentally said 163 in the beginning. It was actually 162. This is episode 163, so let not your heart be troubled. We are back for another installment of the show, giving you the data, the math, the statistics, the reasons why you got to stay on your plan. This is episode 163. Don't fear the paper tiger. Who's the paper tiger? Well, it's, of course, China. China just passed a big round of stimulus, sending their stock market up like 6 or 7% yesterday in early trading. We'll see if that's sustainable. I'm going to talk about why I don't think it's sustainable and why you should stay with U.S. equities for the long run. But I do have a few things to plug before we jump in. Number one, just going to tell you, we're sold out on Investor Day, completely maxed out. I think we actually have a waiting list now. So I told you that thing was going to get sold out. It did. And if you didn't make it this year, no big deal. Just put it on the calendar for next year. Next November, block off the first week of November and just make a commitment to join us in Naperville here. But it's completely packed. We're going to try and get a different venue where we can get some more people in next time. But we are very excited for that. And also, I can finally announce we have a very, very, very special guest this week on Bullish. The episode's going to come out Friday, so just a couple days from now. The legendary Dr. Jeremy Siegel of the Wharton School. He is going to be in person in the studio here with Sam Hardy and myself and producer Owen for an episode of Bullish. Going to be absolutely incredible. Remember, Dr. Siegel is the guy who wrote the book on why you got to be in stocks for the long run. That's what his book's called. It's on the bookshelf behind me here, Stocks for the Long Run. Don't miss that episode. So it's going to come out on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify. Share that with friends and family, and share this episode with your friends and family. Also, get this show out to more people by subscribing to it, liking it. That is so important. We so appreciate you subscribing. If you're watching today, just subscribe to the show on YouTube. It'll take you 1 second. We so appreciate that. It helps us get the clarity and confidence to more people. So we got sold out on Investor Day. We got Dr. Siegel coming in here for Bullish on Friday. Can't wait to share that episode with you. All right, let's jump in this week's episode. Don't fear the paper tiger. What's going on? Well, China is in such a mess right now that they had to pass this massive round of stimulus, and it is massive. It's to the tune of billions and billions of dollar equivalent money. And why do governments pass stimulus? Because things are not going well for them at home. And we told you this for a long time now. We told you China was going to have some issues. We told you that the cracks were going to emerge, and here they are. And you're like, Nick, how did you make that bold prediction 4 or 5 years? Actually, I think it was like 6 years ago now that we made that prediction and we got people out of China. Well, it's not rocket science. It's a communist country. I mean, like, what are you thinking? Investing in a communist country? They literally lock their billionaires up in prison, like Jack Ma. I'm sure I'm going to end up on some watch list for saying this, but communism doesn't work. Sorry to break it to everybody out there. Communism does not work, and it doesn't matter if you cloak it in capitalism. It still doesn't work because you're throwing people in jail if they become innovators. And how does the economy grow? What is wealth built on? It's not built on money. It's not built on capital. It's built on ideas. This is so key for people to understand. The economy only grows when you have good ideas being produced. People don't come up with good, innovative ideas and grow businesses and become entrepreneurial and all the rest of it if they go to jail for innovating. Okay? So again, this is not a complicated call to make. It'd be similar to investing in the Soviet Union in the height of the Cold War. And you're thinking, wow, that would be crazy. Yes, it is crazy. And that's why we told you not to do it this time around with China. It'd be like buying companies based in Venezuela. Good luck. I wish you well. Okay. Probably not going to work out so well for you. The U.S., yes, we have our issues. Yes, we've got our problems. I understand. You can give me the 20 reasons why the U.S. is, got issues. Fine. Can agree to disagree on some of those things. However, it's still the best place for entrepreneurs. You can't argue that. There's no better place if you were going to start a business that you'd want to be than right here at home in the United States on our soil and having the rule of law and personal property rights to grow your business. That's why this place is thriving to the tune of billions and trillions of dollars in wealth. In fact, you could turn off the entire U.S. economic machine and we'd still be the wealthiest place on earth for a very, very, very long time. I hear about the paper tiger coming. I hear about China is going to take us out. They're going to be number one. But the problem is when you actually take their GDP and divide it by the number of people, per capita GDP in China now is basically nothing. If we pull up the stat today, per capita GDP in China is sub $13,000. And you're wondering, how does that compare to the rest of the world? Well, Russia has a higher per capita GDP of $15,000 per person. So you're thinking to yourself, holy cow, I can't believe China is worse off than Russia. That's just data. It's just math. It's just statistics. I'm not telling you to go invest in Russia. That would be a bad idea too. Okay. Not such a good move. But the point is China is really not doing much better than the rest of the world. It just looks big, bad, scary, and sounds like a place that we should be worried about. Yes, there's some issues, of course, but when it comes to global wealth dominance, China's not going to eat our lunch as long as we stop shooting ourselves in the foot. And that's a lot of the problem we have today in the United States. We just got to get out of our own way. Jamie Dimon has said this. This isn't just Nick Stenger at Stenger Family Office saying this. Jamie Dimon has said multiple times that the U.S. just gets out of its own way and we stop making so many unforced errors. We cut taxes, we cut regulation, we let entrepreneurs flourish and thrive. Yes, you got to have rules of the road and all that, but you let entrepreneurs flourish and thrive. The U.S. is the best place on earth. I mean, we're separated by two massive oceans. We got great trading partners, very friendly partners in Canada and Mexico. Mexico buys a ton of gas, oil and gas from us. Okay. We produce a ton of the world's oil and gas. We export it to even the Chinese. And so we've got everything we need. We've got the Great Lakes. We got all the fresh water we could ever want. So as long as we just stop shooting ourselves in the foot here, we got an incredible setup for another 100 years of global dominance. I really believe that. And so when you're investing and you're looking at where am I going to put my money in my portfolio, why in the world would you sell a U.S. entrepreneur and go buy an entrepreneur who does not have the same backbone or the backing of this country? We've got an incredible amount of good stuff going on right here at home. So that's why I say forget the 6% rip in Chinese stocks yesterday. I think that's just a fagoozy, fagazi, woozy, awazi. You're thinking, Nick, the stock market in general is a fagoozy. No, it's not. Not the U.S. stock market. But other places in the world are, okay? How can you possibly know the price of companies or the value of a Chinese stock when all President Xi has to do is wave his magic wand and that person has to go to a camp somewhere, okay? Little tough to invest in a place like that. You've got to have certainty. You've got to have the rule of law and personal property rights. China doesn't have rule of law and personal property rights with mortgages. If you buy a house in China, you are renting the land. You're on a lease from the Chinese government. You don't own anything. That's not the case in the U.S. Yes, there's politicians trying to push us down that road to hell. We're not going to do it. We're not going to go down that path. They're pushing very hard, but we have divided government, the rule of law, personal property rights. We have a system of checks and balances, and thank goodness we have states' rights. So the founders were brilliant. They figured this out years and years ago. They knew that tyranny can come from anywhere and everywhere, and you have to be careful with tyranny. And they figured out we can't have this central planning. Now, that's the big debate where we're at. It's been a debate since Ronald Reagan was president, probably even before that, but certainly since Ronald Reagan was president, tear down that wall. And the debate is between, do you have central planning? Do you have the government run everything, control everything, the means of production? That's communism, Marxism. Or do you have entrepreneurs? Do you have capitalism, not crony capitalism, but do you have entrepreneurs lead the charge? And that debate is so critical that we get right, because if you start from a place of central planning and modern monetary theory, where the government prints money and then that printing of money and easy monetary policies and all the rest of it, low interest rates for decades, in that model, you've made a very conscious decision to embrace the government essentially as all-knowing, all-wise, and even, I'll take it one step further, as God-like. Because once you give the government control over everything, you said you guys are smart enough to plan all this out. If you've read any economics, any history, if you've read I Pencil, which is the classic essay, and we're going to present that to you at Investor Day. We'll have copies of it for you if you're coming. I Pencil shows how even just getting a pencil made is a huge task. I mean, there's so many intricacies in the economy. There's so many different supply chain things that nobody knows about unless you're actually in that business. There's so many complexities of just getting a tomato. Brian Westbury at First Trust Portfolios has pointed this out in the past, that just getting a tomato from the farm to the supermarket is an incredible feat. And so we saw this during COVID, that when you turn the economy on and off like a light switch, and you try to centrally plan everything out, and you try to have one group of people or one person plan this, it's just not possible. It's just not going to work, because think about what goes into making a pencil or making a tomato, and we're going to talk about making donuts at Investor Day. We love donuts, okay? It was just at Diehl's Bakery here in Naperville. Shout out Diehl's. Check it out if you're local. Great bakery. But just getting a donut made. Think about the baking equipment that goes into it. Think about the trucks to get the flour from one place to the bakery, okay? Think about the manufacturers, the distributors. Think about the technology. Think about the guys who repair the trucks. Think about the gas that goes into the truck. There's like a million things that go into just making a donut possible, okay? And so that's the reality of the system we have in the U.S. to an extent, is we still have all these intricacies. All these supply chains are being managed very, very individually. It's like Adam Smith in The Wealth of Nations points out, that it's the division of labor that causes economic growth. One person in the economy only makes horse hooves, and one person makes the saddle, and one person makes the food, and one person makes the inputs that go into the food, and one person distributes the final product. That's the backbone of capitalism. Okay, so we'll stop there on that. The reality with China, though, is it's much more centrally planned. You have 1 billion people over there basically being ruled by just a few hundred. And what I've pointed out to you in the past is that over the past couple years, there's been a major backlash. We don't get much news out of mainland China. We don't know much about what's going on, but we get little hints, little bits and pieces. There's a couple. One is the annexation of Hong Kong. Okay, we know about that. One is the potential annexation of Taiwan. I mean, this is a huge problem. Why is China so desperate to go after Taiwan? Well, because Taiwan makes all the chips. They make all the technology. And back to what I said to start out the show, surprise, surprise, you can't get innovation in China, in a communist country. So what do you have to do? You have to go steal it from somewhere else. And that's exactly what these U.S. companies have found out when they go do business in China. They open up shop. Look at Disney China. Disney China is not even majority owned by Americans. It's majority owned by the Chinese. So do Disney executives have any control over the final output their studios are producing now? Of course not. Okay. And same thing, if you're Cisco or you're Amazon or you're any of these companies, you're Apple, and you go and do business in China, what have the Chinese done for years? They steal the trade secrets. They bring in CCP leaders to go into the companies and be on the boards because they want to control the final outcome. So you're going to see more and more backlash about this. The trade war that started in 2018, and we were very clear to point this out even back then, that it wasn't about the short-term day-to-day of the trade between the U.S. and China. It was more so about offshoring. It was about getting manufacturing out of China that has held us captive for so long, held our companies captive for so long. And even if it doesn't come back to the U.S., that's okay. It just needs to be somewhere that's a little bit more friendly to U.S. business. And so India stepped up in a big way. They're watching this whole thing in 2018 and 2019 with Trump's trade war, and they're like, wait a second, hey, we're not that far away from China. Come over, Apple, come over, all these companies, come do business with us, and we'll be much more favorable to you. India's not a perfect place. We know that, of course, but it's certainly a step above China as far as policy is concerned. Now, India's got some infrastructure problems. They've got some issues, but it's going to get better over time. And tons of manufacturing has left China. It's gone to India. It's gone to Vietnam. It's gone to Mexico. Mexico and U.S. now, the USMCA, that trade deal that was put together a few years ago, is the biggest trade deal in the world. I mean, you can't have a bigger trade deal. So this is what's happened as a result. So why is China struggling? Why are they having to pass all this stimulus? I think you can trace almost all of it, about 95% of it, back to the trade war of 2018 and what President Trump did. I'm not saying I'm not endorsing him as a person. I'm not saying he's perfect and everything he does is great. I'm just telling you that specific policy of going to bat for U.S. companies and pulling manufacturing out of China was one of the finest things we have ever done. And I think a lot of Democrats can agree on that. Republicans can agree on that. Certainly classical liberals can agree on this, that it's good for us to have less communism in control of our companies. Okay. I don't know if you need convincing of that, or if you need me to argue this until I'm blue in the face. Okay. But I will keep pointing it out every week that it's a much better thing that manufacturing is left. So that's a lot of the Chinese problems that we're seeing today. Okay. All that being said, where do you invest now? What do you look at? Do you go and say, hey, let's go buy Chinese companies now that there's stimulus? And I think you got to be very careful here, because the stimulus is typically short-lived. You say, Nick, how do you know that? Well, the reason I know that is just look at Japan. Okay. Japan has run massive deficits, massive quantitative easing, massive monetary printing. They basically founded MMT, modern monetary theory. That was the testing ground for a lot of this bad policy on a central banking level. And look at Japan. Okay, yeah, they've got these big deficits. They got big budgets. They've got all this stuff. They've got some interesting technology. But where's the growth? Where's the growth in Japan? It hasn't been close to the U.S. stock market. And so that's my point. When you make that distinction between central planning, yes, central planning can work as a little boost in the arm. It's like a shot. It's like a little a short-term high. But when that high wears off and you have to face the music and you run out of other people's money to pump into the economy, now you have to grow. At some point in time, you're going to have to grow organically. It's just like a company whose management team doesn't know how to grow top line revenues. And what do? They just cut expenses, right? And some of you have worked at companies like this where they don't know how to grow. The CEO is not an entrepreneur. They're not really a manager. They've just been brought in as a hired gun or a hired hand. And what do they do to get profits up? Well, they cut costs, they slash the budget, and for a couple of quarters, it looks really good. It's really positive. That's why this Chinese stock market was up so much yesterday, because they're cutting costs, basically. They're basically boosting their profits artificially. It's a Fuguzi profit, okay? But in a year or 2 years, that company, because they cut costs, because they can't grow top line revenue, is going to pay the price. It's coming. It's just going to take a year or two. It might take 3 years for Wall Street or for investors to figure it out, but they will pay that price. Same thing with Japan. They can't grow top line growth and revenue and GDP. And so the issue is it's becoming a long-term problem for their economy. Same thing with China. And so, yes, it's a shot in the arm. Yes, it's good temporarily. Okay, it's going to look good for the next couple quarters. But when it's all said and done, when they have to finally face the music and all these billionaires are locked up and have their entire livelihoods going at stake with the CCP, when it's all said and done, okay, where's the growth going to be? And that's my issue with Chinese stocks. You don't have a whole lot of growth in Europe. You don't have any in Japan. You had very, very little in China. And the only thing that boosted Chinese growth the past 15, 20 years has been U.S. capitalism and entrepreneurship. And when they let capitalism come in and thrive, China did okay. When they took it out and they went towards the authoritarian push like they have, it's not done so well. So that's the reality of where we're at. We're going to keep our clients right here in the U.S. We're going to keep them right here in high-quality U.S. blue chip companies. And I'll just wrap up with one thing that we keep pushing and we keep saying is that high quality wins in these jungle years. I still think we're in jungle years, which means you can make a return in the market. Things are going to be okay. The bottom's not falling out. It's not the world ending or anything like that. It's just that you have to be more selective with what you're in. And I want to point this out to you with an easy example. The U.S. S&P 500 high quality index. So this is the S&P 500, all the biggest and best companies, but then screened out for the low quality, just the high quality in the S&P is up 25%, not even including the dividend for 2024. If you look at small caps are up 8%. If you look at mid caps are up 12%. So high quality blue chip U.S. companies have kicked everyone's butt, and I believe they're going to continue to do so for the long run. If we just look at the U.S. S&P large cap index, that's the S&P 500, We're up about 100%, not including dividends, the past 5 years. Mid caps are up 61%, and small caps are up 49% the past 5 years. Compare that to China. China, even with the rally yesterday, is still, let's get this, don't miss this, down 16.5% the past 5 years. So you're saying, where's the growth? Where's the entrepreneurs? They're all right here. So all the best Chinese are right here with us, all the best Japanese, all the best Africans, all the best Latin Americans, all the best Europeans. Where'd they go? They're right here on our soil. And you have the benefit of investing locally with the finest entrepreneurs on earth. So I encourage you, stay your plan, stay on your plan, stay the course here. We're going to see some volatility at some point. I keep reminding you of that. Don't be surprised. Got the election coming up in about 50 days. So just be prepared, brace yourself mentally, but don't do anything about it. Do what Warren Buffett says. When human nature is to scream when something bad happens, don't just stand there, do something. Do what Warren Buffett says. Stand there, don't do anything. That's the best possible thing you can do with your investments. They're a real claim on assets. And Dr. Siegel will talk about that on Bullish. Don't miss Bullish this Friday coming out. Stocks for the long run. Stocks are a claim on real assets. And then Investor Day, we can't wait to see you coming up here in just a few, actually 50 days, less than 2 months. So we'll see you soon. Thanks for being here. This was episode 163. Don't forget to subscribe, like it, share it with your friends and family. We'll see you next week for episode 164.